Hi, this is Mubsy, and this is part 3 of my tutorial for beginners for TASing in Ocarina of Time. So we're going to actually not continue where we left off last. We're just going to jump right into it there because not that many people really care about itemless escape. So the first thing that we didn't cover last video would be saving, which is super straightforward. It's about as easy as it sounds, but just in case there's any confusion. As you can see, I've got a file I've been working on here, not really working as much as just putting in an input, but let's say I wanted to save here. It's as simple as save as or save save. Obviously, we'll just keep the file name that you have now, and save as if you want to resave it as a different name. And then you can obviously close things down and open up just from the open menu there. When you open up every time there, you can just go to open and go to your file here. So the next thing that I wanted to cover after saving is actually something that happens at the beginning of your videos here. As you see, we get this error here from TAS Studio. This is caused by the beginning, usually 16 frames. See, at 16 it happens, 17 it doesn't. The beginning 16 frames of any video are going to have that error come up if you have virtual pad open. So there's two ways around it. One, you can just close virtual pad down and all of a sudden, bam, I have control of these frames here. Or a lot of the time they're going to be during the lag frames at the beginning of the run, or if you've started to run from somewhere else, if it's during like a loading zone animation, sometime where you don't need to put an input, then you don't need to worry about it at all. But you can close it down, put in your inputs manually if you need to, and then open up virtual pad again, and you won't get that error. There are a few ways to make it take less frames at the beginning, I believe. Let me just try one of them here. One of them is to put a marker earlier on. So if I'm just add a marker here on frame 3, as you can see it turns yellow there now, indicating it's got a marker. And now ideally, when I pull up virtual pad, I should be able to go back all the way to frame 3 before I get that error. So it's just something with the marker that it sets by default at the beginning doesn't really work. So any earlier marker will also get by that there, but you can also just avoid it by using the main input window here. So what I could do instead of having 8 there, let's say I wanted that to be 16, is you can just type it there or click on any of the things you wanted to add in, and you could do manual inputs that way if you really wanted to. But it's also pretty easy to just turn off TAS Studio, put a marker beforehand, and do that as well. So the next thing I'm going to cover is if you want a controller plugged in. It can be useful for the odd thing. I don't particularly like using controller because it's really weird when everything's 2 frames delayed. But if you wanted to set one up, it's as simple as going to controller. Make sure you don't set these first top 4 because they're like a cardinal direction. They don't have any analog value to them. It's just up, down, left, or right. And you can set up your analog in the control stick there, so I just chose whatever suited my controller best here. I'm on a PlayStation 3 controller. And then for here, I actually had to flip my sensitivity. You may or may not have to flip it on the one axis, but my up and down were inverted, so I actually had to go to sensitivity and go to minus. I've got mine at 90, but you could have yours at 100 or whatever. This is just what I generally liked my controller at. I thought it felt the most identical to an N64. Well, not so much N64, but just kind of playing on MU or something like that. So, yeah, this is personal preference, and you might not even use it, but if you want it, this is where the controller options are. It can be useful for when you're setting up a file or something like that as well. So the next thing that we're going to cover is the task starting over after you get to a certain point. So let's just advance all the way past here. Let's just keep on going here. So let's pull virtual pad back up. Put it in recording mode. And we're just going to drop this bomb just because we don't need it right now, and just keep moving backwards. I want to just get past the amount of frames so that it starts over. So basically the TAS Studio can only go back a certain amount of frames, which you can set, as I said before, in the max undo levels, I believe it is. But we're just going to keep running this way. Now, I feel like we've probably gone almost enough frames. So now if I were to try to go back to, say, frame like 130, for example, it's going to actually start from the beginning of the video because it doesn't have a buffer that goes back that far. Now the only way to kind of fix where your buffers would start, and this does not work 100% of the time, I'm not sure the exact specifics of it, but if you have a marker set in place. So if you put a marker, it basically is sort of like a respawn point that it can fall back to. So now if we go all the way to the end of the video here, and we can even go a little further. And now if I try to go back to, say, a little bit after 134, it should start me, see, right at the 134 marker instead. So you can use those as, you generally want to make these markers every, couple thousand frames or so, if not more often, just so that if you do go back in time, it's not very far back in time. The other thing that you can do is set up a branch. So what a branch will do is kind of like a save at a certain point. So when we have a branch here, it'll save everything up to that point, and we can load that point whenever we want by just double clicking on it. Now the thing is it'll only have things saved that were done at that point. So for example, if we delete the rest of all of this here and remove it all, and now let's just resave, update this branch here. Now let's say we go do a bunch of task stuff, and then we need to go back and do something. If we were to go back to this, it undoes everything. It basically keeps just the inputs that were saved at that point in time. So branches are super useful as kind of a save pointer when you're not sure what's going to happen. You can I usually make a branch and a save at the same time, but a lot of the time that way I can fall back to a certain point if I need to redo things quickly by just loading up the branch instead of the markers not always jumping you to where you need to go. Usually they're pretty good, but sometimes they won't snap you to the right position. So having a branch in place can be useful for going back to the beginning of a certain segment and starting over or something like that. Okay. So now that we've kind of got all that stuff figured out, a lot of people were wondering about how to get a file set up for if they were doing a smaller task. So you might be wondering how I got myself into this position where I have bombs and pretty much everything else here. The easy way to do this doesn't really exist, but I'll show you the easiest way possible as far as I know, which is to actually use the practicerom, which is normally used for practicing the game, but you can also use it to put items onto a character, and the SAVERAMs are going to be the same. So the first step to doing this is going to be to go to the practicerom website. So practicerom.com. Download, and I'm just going to open it wherever. You can extract it to wherever you'd like to. I'm just going to extract it to my BizHawk folder and give it a new one. We'll just call it GZ. Perfect. So now that we've got that put into our folder here, our GZ folder, now we can take a copy of the ROM and we're just going to put it in there. This is all covered in the installation guide and everything, but this is just it being done quickly. I'm just going to paste this in here. And now we just drag this on top of the patch. So this is just a 1.0 Japanese ROM here, the same ROM that we're going to be doing all of our task work on. And just dragging it into patch. And as you can see, it says that it was successful there, and you can see that we now have this GZOOT 1.0 J.Z64 here. And so we can just copy this and put it in our main folder here with the rest of our everything. So now we've got a patch version of the practicerom. And now what we can do is close down the rest of this stuff here. And open that practicerom. You might need to click the play button at the beginning of a new game. And now all we have to do is, I'm going to hit Z, or L and R to pull up this menu here. And we're going to go to warps, which then we hit the L button again to advance. Let's say we want to be adult. So I'm going to go down here, hit right to move over to this side options here, hit L to select it, and we're going to choose adult. And then let's choose a place. We're just going to choose overworld, for example, Hyrule Field coming from market. And bam, we're an adult coming from market. And now we just need items. So the next thing that we're going to do here is go to return, inventory, equipment and items. Looks like we have pretty much everything already. I must not have wiped the save RAM. Give me a moment here and I will clear the save RAM and we'll start anew. Let me just make sure that it wiped my save file. It did not. Okay, let's just delete this the manual way, and we'll start from scratch. So go into our N64 folder, save RAM, and I'm just going to delete any of the save RAM for this. Your first time doing this, you won't have to do this, but if you're setting up a new one, you might need to delete the save RAM files. So warps, current age is now adult, and then go to places, overworld, Hyrule from market. It looks like it's giving us certain items when we do this, because we didn't select a file, probably. So start it one last time here for you guys. This was going a lot smoother before. Okay, so now we can just start the file. Once it's actually started here, now if you hold R first and then hit L, it usually works better. And then adult. Here we go. So we've got absolutely no items now. So the problem was I wasn't starting a file first. Now what I can do is go to return, go to inventory, and just equip anything that I want equipped for this particular file. I'm just going to do everything. So you're just hitting the L button to confirm that you want something. It'll only give you one Ocarina and one hookshot item, obviously. And then these black boxes are for your ammo counts. Keep in mind that it does offer you the glitched options too, so make sure you just select the ones that you actually want. Alright, so now that we've got all of those items here, we might want some health too. So what we can do now is go to energy cap by hitting right here, and then max health is 140 is what we'd want there to get max heart capacity. And then let's give us some double defense as well. This is actually going to just be 14 here. Then for 1 on every star, will give us magic. Just set that to 1 if you want a full magic meter. Those are all the main changes you might want to make on this, unless you want to give yourself some songs, which, why not, right? You might need those in your TAS. So we're just going to give ourselves all of those. And then amounts is the quantity that you have of each of them, so you can manually set each one of these here to, you know, however many you have. So I'm just making a file here that has maximum of everything. And 140 here. And we'll give us, you know what, we'll give ourselves some rupees too. You never know when you need to buy something in your TAS as well. So we just set those to all of the amounts there. Return, return, and return. So that should be everything. The pauses in this are going to take an abysmally long time because normally you have to have an anti-lag cheat in there. But you can then select all the items that you want to equip. So for my sake, I think we just need something like that. Looks fine. And we'll equip our shield. And once you've got everything you've got good to go, you're going to hit B and save the game. So once the game is saved, we can actually close down the emulator or leave it open for now. And go into M64 in our BizHawk folder and go to SAVERAM. And you'll see this SAVERAM here that was created for this. So we just want to copy that now. And now we're going to go to the default name of our main ROMs here. So for our case, it's just a Zelda no Densetsu Taki no Ocarina Japan. And we're just going to rename this to whatever. I'll just call it Nope for now. But make sure you copy the name first. So before you get rid of it, I'm just going to cut the name and then call it Nope for now. Why not? Whoops. I said Nope. And then take this copy and put that copy in its place there with the file name. You can then delete the old one there. Now, when we open up our regular game here now, and if you don't have a controller plugged in to do all the things I've been doing, you can use the virtual pad. It works all the same. Now that we're in the Vanilla OOT, it should be right there. Let me try shutting down the emulator. And it should be the default option there. And it's not. I'm just going to delete them for now. Open things back up. This should at least create a SAVERAM. That should have at least created a SAVERAM. we go. And we'll try this again. Oh, it must have given us a second file name there. Maybe I already had a copy of it before. Maybe that's why it wasn't showing up to me. If it makes a copy like that, make sure you rename it the correct version. There we go. Now when you, there, that makes sense now. So make sure that it doesn't rename your file to a 2 or something like that. Now that you've got that, we can actually load up the file in Vanilla Ocarina of Time. Now the next step here, now that we're done messing around there and having a few little errors, my apologies for the time wasted, is going to be to go to where we'd want to go to start things up. So I'm just going to go back to kind of near where Market was. Again, you don't need to be using a controller for this stuff. This is just the kind of things the controller is actually useful for. Alright, and I'm going to just pause the emulation here because this is where I want to start one from. We're going to go to File, we're going to go to Movie, and we're going to go to Record Movie. And now we're going to choose, this is important here, from Now. Instead of from Power On or from SAVERAM, we want to choose from Now, which will make it work immediately. We can call this Tutorial Part 3, and we'll even give this a default actor name. So now this will create a movie starting at that very instance there. So now what we can do is open up our TAS Studio, and it's going to say that the movie is going to have to be closed. That's fine, we've already saved. So now when we go to open, this should be tutorial part 3 here, and it even does us the courtesy of making it a TAS project file as well. So you can just open up the TAS project file, and now as you can see when we start advancing frames here, we've got a nice task starting from the beginning of right where we started there. So you could trim down things as much as or as little as you needed to, but this is basically how to get a file started up to wherever you need it to be started. Next thing that people were looking for coverage on was just some basic bomb tricks and other tricks here. So what I'm going to do next is just do a few bomb tricks here for you guys. So let's open up all of our normal tools, get our RAM watch open. Okay, and advance until, I'm going to advance until I don't have any speed and then time. Bam. So the moment you hit 0 here, there is another property I'll let you guys know about, and it's if your movement before frame was 0, it only takes you one frame to turn sideways. So as you can see, I'm just going to hold right for one input and everything turns. So that's useful to know for certain things. So we're going to actually pull a bomb and turn right on the same frame, and then Z and neutral for a frame, and then hold down to start backwalking. So this should just turn 90 to the side, start backwalking. Now the first thing we're going to do is a HESS. So there's 4 bomb flashes, 5 bomb flashes. This is around the latest that we'd want to drop a bomb for our HESS on average. So the easiest thing to do now is just going to be to hit R to drop the bomb. I can release that input. And just keep backwalking for a few frames, and then release. And I released the Z there so I don't let the shield flick. And now rolling into the bomb, right when it's about to explode. Switch to, and that's from a neutral roll, switch to ESS. So if you don't know how to do any of these tricks ahead of time, I suggest you watch a tutorial explaining kind of how they work. But the basic premise of a HESS is to dry roll into a bomb right before it explodes in ESS position with no other inputs held. And the moment you start rolling, you can pretty much go to the right ESS. And let's hope we have the right frames here. Now the frame we're looking for is this frame here. The first frame is standing up inside the explosion, but since we're 2 frames ahead, we actually have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames backwards, and then put in the Z and the R. And as you can see, that didn't work there. So that means that something along the lines here was messed up. Could it be our distance? Could it be... It could be a lot of things, right? So I'm going to actually try back walking just a little bit further away from the bomb. See if that helps here. So I'll put in 3 more frames of back walking. And now let's just advance until we get to the frame we want. That frame here. 1, 2, 6. And there, bam, we got it. So sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, knowing the frames ahead of time, but you can also go by trial and error. You know, I realized that I was rolling too close to the bomb there for my roll timing, although I could have done it a different way and just adjusted my other, my roll timing itself. But I chose to just move further back from the bomb and set things up a little bit better. But basically the basic inputs for a HESS are to just dry roll into a bomb, and then in that standing up phase there, you want to hit Z and R while still in ESS. Now once we've got this HESS going, you can change direction of your HESS by going to the other direction here, and then I'll go this way instead. You can change your angle, obviously, by dropping your Z inputs for a little bit until you get to where you need to go to. And then there's the nervous HESS, which is 3 frames in each direction. There's a script that can do this, but it crashes a lot. Now the benefit of this is that it looks really cool and that it doesn't target at all. But as you can see, you don't drop the HESS as long as you go back and forth between these, because the only thing that'll make a HESS drop is 1, going out of the range, but 2, if when your HESS is turning, if it catches up to the direction it's turning, then your HESS will die as well. So this just takes advantage of it turning back and forth non-stop. And as you can see here, we'll play it through. You can see it's a nervous HESS. He's going back and forth there. Alrighty, moving on to the next trick here is we'll do a quick mega side hop, or mega flip, I guess. Mega side hops might be a little too easy. So we're going to do pretty much the same everything we did here, except now there's 3 different types of mega flips you can do basically. One of them I won't bother teaching because it's not really relevant, and that involves slightly better positioning. Now this one here, hopefully, we're going to dry roll, and then shortly after rolling forward, we're going to start holding down and shield. And I think it's around this frame here. We're going to try to backflip. No, I think that was late. So what you can do is just, if you're just trial and erroring, just add in those frames. And as you can see, there we go, we got it. Basically, one method of mega flipping is to hold down into the explosion like while you're rolling, and then once you get to like this frame here where you're deep inside the explosion, then you can backflip. And now the other important type is a distance megaflip, which can be a little bit tricky. Your positioning does have to be correct, so let's see if we can get one here. So this one would involve rolling in with just neutral and ZNR until your shield comes up, and then you hold down for one frame, and then you backflip. And we got it there. Perfect. That one, sometimes your positioning has a bigger impact on, but basically you're going to want to roll until you see the first frame with his shield up. So this frame, and then hold down for one frame while still holding Z and R, and then you hit A the frame after that, and that'll give you a distance mega flip, which will send you backwards, obviously, with more distance. Those are kind of the two main bread and butter techniques for moving around. One other thing that people were wondering about was quick draws, so we'll just quickly, after this here, if you want a quick draw, obviously you need Z held, but you're going to hit B to pull your sword, advance 3 frames if you don't have your sword held. Whoop. Maybe it's just 2 there. Perfect. Okay, yeah, so just advance 2 frames, and then on the 3rd frame you're going to hit A because I didn't have sword out. Now if I already had sword out, like I do now, it should just be 1 frame between the 2, I believe. Or is it back to back? Oh yeah, if you already have your sword out, it's just hit A. I'm dumb. Duh. But if you're going for it, sometimes it can vary, I think. But in most of my experience, it's 2 frames in between. But I think every now and again, it's 3 frames in there as well, in the odd circumstance. But generally, you're just going to hit B to pull out sword, and then it takes a few frames for sword to come out. So by the time sword actually comes out, as you can see, this is the frame here normally you'd want to hit A on, where he's pulling his sword out from behind his shield there, and that's normally the frame you'd hit A on. So you can also just look for that frame and go back 2 full frames, so 6 frames in BizHawk, and then you should be in the money. Next thing the people were wondering about was desyncs and fixing stuff that happened earlier on. Now the hard answer is here, if something is messed up early in your run and you've done stuff since then, the stuff you've done since then is useless because, well, I'm not going to say entirely useless. If there's no RNG involved in the stuff you've done, then you don't have to worry about it. But the moment that any RNG comes into play, then you are going to have things changing on you. So the likelihood of an entire run or segment working is pretty slim when enemies might get in your way, cause you to target things weird, etc., etc. Or if you have to fight enemies in the segment, obviously it's going to go wrong. So there's no real way to go back and fix things. That's why you need to do things right the first time. If you do get a desync, it is one of the hardest things, you know, mentally to deal with, because a lot of the time it involves going all the way back until where that desync was and starting anew from that point forward. Desyncs generally the one way they can get caused is if you accidentally are scrolling through stuff and you accidentally say click a button like that, especially a button that doesn't really do much, you know. But it might affect an RNG seed, but you wouldn't really see any effect of it. Sometimes it just happens. It just happens, and there's no real way of knowing what caused it. This program isn't perfect, and it's just the way it is. So save frequently, make a lot of backups, That way, if your movement somehow does desync, you might have an older version that works. That's why branches can be particularly useful too, because sometimes if you lose a lot of progress, you might be able to go back to a branch that had the inputs done correctly and save the, at least salvage the TAS. So basically, you can't go back in time, and if you do get a desync, usually you have to go back to before the desync and start from there. Now, you might be able to save some inputs and keep them. If you do copy and paste inputs from here, for example, they do show up in, you can like kind of hold on to them for a sec in Notepad, and then you could paste this right back into it, copy and paste it right back in for some of your inputs. So moving on to the next thing I wanted to cover, and this will be the last thing I think I cover in this video here, is going to be if you've got larger files, especially, as I've said before, the markers don't always work. Sometimes you do get sucked back to the very beginning of the movie, and you have to watch from there forward. It's really useful if you've got a long movie to split it into, say, five segments. That's what I did with my my one pause route of all dungeons, is I actually split it into a child and 4 adult segments, each one around 100,000 frames, and then joined them all in one continuous file as well. So the first step here is if we wanted to separate files. Actually, let's just get into, I think I can make this work into a HESS here, because this was the same from before. So let's just get into Kakariko. Alright, do we hit the bridge? No. Okay, let's just fix our angle way earlier on. Sometimes you need to get used to going way back. Is that too much? I feel like that was too much. Yep. We'll put one Z input back in. And try swapping to right. Whoop. Swap back to left momentarily. Alright, whatever, close enough. Let's say we wanted to make this a splitting point for a video. So the easiest way is to find a frame that's very iconic and easy to recognize. So for me, let's just find something in here. Let's find the first frame that we can see. Anything. So let's see, 850, pure black, 851. We have a bit of a halo in the background there that you can see. So it's important to pick an easy to point out frame that's always going to look the same. And try to make your inputs consistent throughout this whole area too. So an area like loading zones are what I always use. Now what we can do is on this frame here, or actually I usually go back a little bit beforehand, just so that I can find the frame on both spots. But we're going to mark this frame here with a save state and a mark, or with a branch and a marker. And I'm going to go back just a little bit before. We're going to save this current file, just so, because this part here creates a new file and opens it automatically. So save your current file. Sometimes it takes a hot second. And now go new from now. And now what this will do, we'll start a brand new task project file from that current state. And it'll probably want to go all the way forward to this one here. Now we're going to close virtual pad just so that it's easier to see. And here's the frame we wanted to start on here. So it's okay if there's a little bit of overlap there. Now we can continue on from here forward. This part here could look like however it wants. Now that this is part 2. And now what you're going to want to do to join the files, what we'll do, let's just move forward here for a little while. Alright, let's say all I wanted to do was talk to this dude up here, just so that we have some movements done. Is there even a dude here? I thought there was a dude here at night. Maybe we'll just pick up this grass. Maybe that's what we came here to do. Okay, good enough. So let's say that that's our new task section, our whole new segment 2. Now we want to combine those two parts here. So now what we do is we can save this file here. You might want to do a save as when you're actually on a project, because this one here names it .tasproj, because it just adds tasproj to the end of the name of the current thing you were on. So you'll probably want to save it as a second part. So we'll call this actually part 2. And you can remove that .bk stuff in there if you'd like as well. That's just in there from the previous file name. But now that we've got this part saved, and we don't need it anymore, we're going to copy everything. So I just did Control A to select everything, Control C to copy. But you can also, if you want to make sure copy, just right click and click copy. And now open up the previous, or actually sorry, but now when you do this you need to make sure you're on the right frame. So we only want the right frame and forward selected. So I'm going to close virtual pad so I don't get this stupid error at the beginning. This is the frame we wanted forward. So this is the first frame. You can see the halo. We're going to copy all the inputs we just had. Copy. We can, just for safety, if you'd like, put them in a notepad. And now open up your original task project file that you want to append to. Or you can make a new file. I usually have a new file named linked, and then I have my separate parts. Sometimes switching between open versions here doesn't work well in TAS Studio, but it looks like it's working well right now. As you can see, there's the frame we marked before, is the first frame that you can see that halo. And we're just going to go to that frame and click paste. Now, since we pasted from those two identical frames, everything here that happens afterwards, we can just click play. And you should see everything link up perfectly here now. You should run up and grab that plant because we pasted all of the same inputs there. And a lot of the time, like, it can take a while, but you'll copy and paste the 100,000 or so, frames. And then you have to play through them all, obviously, on your new linked file. But, as you can see here, everything's linking up, and you should make it up to this plant and just pick it up and throw it. And it'll become apparent if you messed things up earlier. you know, you'll get a desync or something like that. Things won't look right if you didn't choose the exact correct frame. But as you can see, everything linked up to where we were at, and we were able to conjoin those two movie videos by copying and pasting the inputs from the identical frame. And it'll keep all your values and everything's, you know, the SAVERAM is the same in between the files, so everything there should work out in your favor. So now that you've learned how to do that, that should be everything you guys need to know for now. I'll be doing part 4 with some more information coming out soon. Mostly a lot of stuff that I didn't have time to cover in this video here. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully this helped you. This should give you the basis to kind of make your own videos split off and have a good workflow. And also teach you, you know, the basics of a couple of bomb tricks. Scrubbing for the inputs there and just trial and error is usually the easiest way. But to do any of the tricks, obviously you're going to need a basis of knowledge of the actual game. If you don't know how to do a trick, you're probably not going to be able to TAS doing the trick because you need to know the inputs. So anyways, I appreciate everyone who's been watching. All the comments, keep them coming so that I know what you guys want to learn how to do next. And until then, I'm going to, you know, leave this with you guys to hopefully come up with some great creations. But till then, everyone stay frosty, and I'll catch you on the flip side.